So I was going to ask a question on Godot's Discord, and every time that I ask a question, I try to answer someone else's question in order to keep the balance. So I was answering this question here, which is basically asking how to add another field here to put some extra functionality. And then I created this response here, but I couldn't send. So I'm just gonna try to explain very quickly how I think it works. Now, take this with a grain of salt. It's just a superficial thing to make it easier for you to see on the source code for yourself how this thing works. But basically, the question is how to add a field here. So I'm going to explain how the export pipeline works, which is basically when you click here and how you add the configuration, stuff like that. So I'm going to go over the source code and briefly explain. But the summary is this stuff that I wrote here. So basically, the editor node is the class that is going to build the entire editor. So this class here is the one that is going to be responsible for creating the actual configuration that he shows on the picture. So it creates this GUI here. I think it creates the configuration state, let's say. So it's the class that you should look for to see how these options here are built. But then on the editor nodes constructor as well, we're going to have the editor export class. And the editor export class is the one that has the functionality for the actual exports. So this is built inside of the editor nodes constructor. And then on this function here, register exports is the one that is going to use this class here to add the export for each platform. So this file here is built on build time. And then for each platform, I'm not going to explain how it's built, but for each platform is going to have an entry point function, which is basically this function here. So it builds this using scones on build time, and then it puts the functions for each platform based on the build time logic here. So basically the easiest way to think about it is that each one of these functions is the one that is going to build the export platform configuration for each one. So basically this is the class for Windows. And then it uses the editor export that initializes on the editor nodes constructor, which is a singleton, to add each platform to the editor exports. So this is the function that is going to add the platform. And the logic for each option here, instead of here, is going to be on each of these platforms. So if you want to change or add an additional option, what you would have to do, I imagine, it just goes, for the Windows example is going to be on this class here. So you would just go in the class, study the logic, and then add an additional option and puts additional functionality. And the editor export presets is going to be the class that is used to save the configurations. So after you created the configuration and you put the options you want, and then I think either you export or you save, it's going to cache the configurations on this file here. So you can go into the root of the project, root folder of your project, and look for this file. And this is the file that is going to have the options, and the editor node is going to get this file from when it's loading the configuration. It's going to read this file and it's going to update the options for the exports. And the function that is actually called is export project. So it calls from the base class, which is editor export platform, I think. And it calls export project. And then each one of the platforms is gonna be a class that derives from the editor export platform. So for the Windows, I think it inherits from this class first, and then this class has the export project, and then on the export project function, you're gonna have these three other functions here, which are gonna be the ones that run when you export a template. So it starts the flow on the editor node, then eventually calls export project from the editor export platform, which depending which platform you have on the configuration is gonna call this function for the classes. And in this case, it prepares the templates, then modifies the templates using some Windows functionality, using the OS class, and then this one I think is the one that is going to build the final executable, which is going to depend on the export configurations, which is dependent on the export presets. Yeah, this one, so all of them inherit from editor export platform. I think that's pretty much it. So that's basically how it works. So if you want to change the configuration, I didn't try it yet, and maybe I will in the future, but I think all you have to do is just go on one of these classes that inherit from Editor Export platform on the source code, then study the functionality, and then just add an additional configuration with additional functionality to put there. And then you can go into the export project function to see how the final function that builds the actual export is going to be executed. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, so I might come back today to study some other stuff here, but I decided to just go over this. I'm gonna read the whole thing here, just see if I didn't forget anything. Basically, the code that I'm looking at is the one on the main Godot repository, and it's gonna be the editor node code. The editor codes is gonna be on the editor folder from the main Godot's code. So basically, this runs on editor nodes, runs these functions that are the entry points to create the platform configurations for each one. Then on each one of these functions is going to generate this class which inherits from editor export platform, which is going to have the functionality. And then this project export dialog is the one that actually builds the front ends, which is what shows on the GUI. So you have to look both into this project export dialog class and on the editor export platform classes to be able to change the functionality. And just change on the source code, and then you build the source, and you if you do this, you have to put on the custom template here, because the final executable you're gonna get is gonna be different than the original one. So the final export that you get is just the engine executable with the data for your project, either the data on the same folder on the package file, or the data is gonna be written inside of the executable. If you put this embed package option, if you turn it on, it's going to write the data for a project inside of the executable, the final executable. But in both situations, if you do what I'm saying and you build a custom version of the engine, then you have to use that executable that has your extra code on the final. If you want the additional logic you have that you changed on the source code to be on the final project, you need to use the same executable that you compiled the source code with. Which is basically the path we're going to put here on the custom template. If you don't want to do that, you just want to use the official executable, then you can either download from the Godot site, or you just build without changing the source code, and then you use that. And the way you can find is going to be on the app data, at least on Windows. You can go Godot saves the configurations on the app data path, which I'm going to show here. It's basically this path here is going to be C, users, your username, app data, roaming, and Godot. And then here you can find stuff related to the, I think this is on the export templates. These are the ones that normally by default Godot's going to try to find, depending on the version. And these are just the executables you get, either from downloading from the website or from building yourself. And Godot, what basically Godot does, at least for the Windows final exports, is you get this executable, which is just the engine executable, and then write the data for your project. So the final executable is just going to be that. If you want a custom one, then you put on the path, put the path of the final executable you got on the custom templates, and then it's going to allow you to get that one. I think that's pretty much it. So I might come back today to continue to work on the project that I have there. So see you next time.